welcome to SSO Coaching 76. Today we have a special treat. We are chatting with Dr. Lucette. Dr. Lucette comes to us as a public speaker, a coach, an author, and a visionary. But she's also a veterinarian. So if you're in the Texas area and you need a good vet, you can always find her. Welcome, Dr. Lucette.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just thrilled to be here. Thrilled to be here and talk about mindset and what it takes to have an extraordinary life.
That is awesome. So now your little bit of about your background is you're a veterinarian by trade and a business owner by choice. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so I owned my own veterinary practice for 22 years. I did sell it a year ago to become an entrepreneur and start an extraordinary life, how to build an extraordinary life. And at the full title for me is how to build an extraordinary life at any age. Because sometimes it's time to do something different. Sometimes where your passion leads to from life's challenges changes. So I'm still a business owner. I still own my own business. I'm just owning a different business. And so I do still work in the veterinary field some now. But in order to grow this business, I couldn't be full-time owning a practice as well because they're two very full-time jobs. So I was able to sell it to then spend more time in this one and then work some veterinary shifts. I still love veterinary medicine, but I also want to change veterinary medicine from the inside out and give business owners and women in particular the tools that I didn't have for so long, that I gained through some really challenging times. And that really is what led me to move into a different business. It just so strong to be able to share with others what I've been so blessed to get to learn and live.
That is absolutely awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? So I know you are a veterinarian, but I know a little bit more about your practice. And in audience, I will be posting her bio on the Spotify and on YouTube, so that way everybody can link to Dr. Lucette and you can actually talk to her more if you want to, one-on-one. But tell us a little bit more about your journey. What brought you to where you are now?
So on the heels of a divorce in which I didn't ask for child support because I felt like that was the best choice for my child, within days I found out I had cancer.
Jeez.
And I was self-employed. I had no child support. I had no paid sick days because I was self-employed professional. And I was facing 15 months of cancer treatment, including multiple surgeries, radiation, chemotherapy, which was at the time, extremely overwhelming. And out of necessity, and the determination not to fail my child any more than I already had, just being in that situation, I learned a lot during that time period that really changed my life and changed my journey. And then I ended up in a situation where my brother suffered a severe traumatic brain injury and was not supposed to live. And then he was never supposed to wake up from his coma, but he did. And then he was never supposed to get out of an institution, but he did. But through the challenges that come with severe traumatic brain injuries, he ended up in a state mental hospital. And if I didn't step up to help him out, that's where he was going to be the rest of his life. And I just couldn't leave him there.
Well, it's your brother. I can understand that.
And so I stepped out of my business. And at the time, my banker told me not to. My parents didn't want me to, but they were not in a position to help him. And so out of that situation, then I ended up in a situation where I almost went bankrupt. And then through determination and really changing my mindset, going back to the tools that I'd learned going through cancer and then learning more tools, I went from 3 years of really, really struggling and almost losing everything to, in 1 year, almost completely out of debt, and another 8 months out of debt and paying a big cash down payment on a new house or a house for me. I sold my house to help him. And so then I didn't own my own home anymore. And so through all of those tools, I was able to learn how to not just survive, but thrive and think differently, really differently, and understand that so much of what we're taught to live from the outside in, and it starts really early. And a lot of our core values and beliefs are ingrained in us by the time we're 7 years old. But there's a lot more that we still do pick up from society, from teachers, from, if you have any sort of difference, a lot of time it becomes something where you feel like you're not worthy, you're a failure, whether that's a learning challenge or any sort of difference, because society puts everybody in boxes.
Yeah.
It's the way our society has developed, and it's not how we're meant to be. We're meant to live from the inside out. When we learn to live from the inside out, which is what I use reverse, reframe, and rebuild as tools to change that thinking process and to open the doors to understanding how to let go of other people's opinions, because it's so ingrained in us and we're so tangled up in it. We don't know how to unwind it. And it's actually some very simple tools that can be profoundly life-changing for that. When we do that, we develop the resilience that we don't have when we're living from the outside in. And rather than being buffeted around by events and life choices, we become really resilient. We understand that there's a solution for every challenge, and every challenge has an opportunity in it somewhere. And when you get to that point, the hardest challenges become so much easier. It doesn't mean you're not ever sad. After I went through all of that and really got solid in the tools that I had, I hit really right towards the end, right as I had become financially solvent and was almost out of debt. My mother's health started going downhill, and um, her health started going downhill, and she was still taking care of my dad, who was in the later stages of dementia. They lived on a 500-acre farm 2.5 hours from me. And I was running a business that was open 6 days a week, and no one else was available to help them. And it was crazy, the things that happened. And the tools I learned made such a because mom was going in and out of the hospital, and then her health really started crashing, but she wouldn't let me help her until it was complete crisis. She was very independent and very strong-willed, and I was trying to walk that line of, if she gets mad at me, who's going to help her? So I need to really be cognizant of waiting, and I knew it was going to be a crisis for me, and there wasn't really much I could do about it. And I lost my mom in January of 2020. And the events that happened to just get her to safety just in time and be able to help my dad and get him in a memory care in Texas. And then everything they owned was still on the ranch in Oklahoma. And, we were going into, that was January of 2020. By March of 2020, we were in a shutdown, and I was running an essential business. So that year was nuts, and had a lot of grief in it too. I ended up losing my dad in December of 2020. He was diagnosed with COVID in November and passed away in December. But that year, even though there was sadness, there was so much more resilience. I used all the tools at my disposal that I had learned to get through that year and really function really well. And even because I was living by myself and running an essential business, which meant I was coming home alone every day while all this is going on. Everybody was in their pods. Well, I didn't really have a pod.
Yeah.
So, God bless me with God, the universe, whatever your term is, some amazing people that were nearby, but it was still a journey that was mostly mine. And those tools made such a big difference, everything that I've learned. And that's when the calling really started coming to step out and share those tools with others, because it makes such a difference in how you get to live. extraordinary life is really about how you get to live from the inside out, how you can get up and be in love with your life and your choices, and how to think in a way that allows so many amazing things to occur and come to you, because we don't realize how much choice we have in our thoughts, and that a lot of times we're letting others choose for us. We're letting our emotions choose for us. We're giving our power away to everyone else and thinking that we have to either make them happy for us to be happy, or we're allowing them to make us mad and blame it on them. And so we're keeping ourselves in a place of unhappiness by giving our power away to them and saying it's up to them to make us not mad anymore, to do something different to make us so that we're not mad or sad or disappointed, and we don't even realize that that's what that means, because we've been taught to live that way.
I love that statement. You're giving your power away. And that's very, in my opinion, it's very extreme for women. We have a problem with that because a lot of times we rule ourselves and our lives on emotion. And that's just because we're emotional creatures. As a woman, we just are. It's just the way we're genetically made. We will respond in kind to situations by those emotions. And you, I mean, you went through a lot. I mean, you were divorced, single parent, no, child support, so no help there. Not to mention the fact you had cancer, then you had the brother, and then your mother, and then your father. My goodness. I mean, had you not found those tools, had you not taught yourself those tools, had you not learned how to live from the inside out, a lesser woman would not have survived any of that, let alone all of that. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, women are given more of a, we're taught it's better to give than to receive. If you don't learn to receive, you have nothing to give. And receiving, meaning receiving from all around us, we don't feel like we're worthy. We put ourselves last, and we're taught that that's a virtue, but it actually hurts us in even being able to do the things that we want to do. And we are taught to be people pleasers, that our job is to please others. And you have to you have to take care of yourself, know who you are. So in that sense, yes, please yourself and be lined up with who you are to truly be able to be of assistance to anyone else. And we're taught to give our power away.
Well, it's what, like they say, whenever you're on an airplane, put your mask on first. Because if your mask is on first, you're receiving the oxygen, which means that you can breathe and you can actually help others. There's a reason behind that. I mean, for a very long time, the first thing that popped into my head when that flight attendant said that was, I'll be damned if I put mine on first. I'm gonna put it on my kid first. Plain and simple, but that's the mom response, but I would have the 2 seconds to put it on my face, and then 2 seconds
Then
later
you
he's
can
still
get it on your
fine.
kid's face in plenty of time while not passing out. Because if you get it on your kid's face, but then you don't get it on your own, and you pass out, you're of no use to your child at that point.
Exactly. We have to take care of ourselves. I learned through my journey in my business to put myself first in a lot of aspects, because if I wasn't bringing my full self to the table, then I was not only shortchanging those around me, but I was shortchanging me.
Yourself.
I was essentially, like you said, I was giving my power away. And I needed to realize that. And when I finally embraced that, I think that was when my journey changed. And that was when my career took off. When you embraced that, that was when your life changed. And like you said, you literally got yourself from having to sell your home, having almost, at bankruptcy, to getting out of debt within 1 year. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, that's significant right there.
Well,
I mean, it took me years to pay off my car. So
yeah, and I mean the car payment was still there, but the hundreds of thousands of debt for the business. And, I was paying back payroll taxes and while I was struggling to pay um, suppliers and make sure I made payroll. And, it was challenging at first, but the biggest thing was I developed a morning routine, and the morning routine was around getting myself in feeling in the best space possible. It was meditation specifically, because you have to stop that train of negative voice that's going on in your head all the time. And when you're in a space like that, it can be really loud. The reason I was in it for 3 years is I got overwhelmed. I truly believe that I didn't have to be there 3 years. It was the thought process that I ended up being in and allowing myself to stay um, in overwhelmment and feeling like a loser and feeling like, instead of being proud of myself for stepping out when everybody told me I couldn't, I was mad at myself because it was hard and it wasn't going well. And so I felt overwhelmed. I felt like a loser. These are the things I was telling myself. And it took me a while to realize that, what I'm saying? And I really what happened was, one day I just got up and said, all right, are you willing to fail? Are you willing to go bankrupt and walk away from 18 years of business and all your clients that need you, and care, and that you care about? Are you willing to do that? And when I sat down and had that conversation with myself, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not willing to do that. Well, then you have to change something, because for sure the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, which I've been doing for 3 years. I was working hard. I was sacrificing. I wasn't going on any sort of vacations, which I couldn't afford at that point. But also, you can do a lot. I was really basically punishing myself. I wasn't telling myself that, but that's what I was doing. Like, I just kept working harder. I didn't allow myself to really, do much in the way of fun things. I
Were you
stayed
blaming
away.
yourself for
I
something?
isolated myself to a certain point, right? I had a few friends that I would still see here and there, but I was basically punishing myself.
Were you
And
blaming
so,
yourself for something?
mhm, yep, I felt like a loser because that was because it didn't go as easy as it could have. But the whole thing was what I was telling myself. Thoughts are powerful. And what's so important to understand is, even in terms of your faith, we don't believe we're worthy. And so we have stuff come to us and miss it and turn it away because we say we're not ready. It's not our time. And then we say that God is said it wasn't the right time. And that had nothing to do with it. It was what we were telling ourselves. We shut the door on the opportunity and keep saying that God is doing it or it's not the right time. And it's everything to do with what we're telling ourselves. As soon as I started telling myself a different story, when I got in that chair every morning, I mean, literally, if I had the kind of night, and when you're in those kind of situations, you have a lot of stress. So when I had a night where I couldn't sleep, I didn't try to get an hour nap in. I got up and got in that chair. I learned that that was the most important thing to do, was get myself in the best place possible, was shut that voice up for a little bit, because the whole reason I couldn't sleep is things were still going through my head, right? Sometimes after I figured that out, I might get up at 3 if I couldn't sleep, and then just stay up for the whole day, and don't go around saying how tired you are or anything. Focus on having the best day possible all the way through. Stay in that. Get up at 3, meditate, do a guided meditation, because you already can't shut your brain up. So let somebody else help you with that, because that's what starts to let in ideas and intuitions and inspirations, because truly God, the universe, wants you to succeed, always is for you. It's what you're telling yourself that's blocking it. And that's what I became very clear on. So I don't have any regrets for that 3 years, because it made the change so clear and obvious. Then when I went in 1 year, and I didn't, the biggest change was just walking in with a different attitude. And at first, I'd be in a really great space and I'd get to work, and creditors are calling and problems are happening. And then I'm struggling, right? But as I was consistent, it really started changing pretty quickly. I started to be able to think different thoughts while it was happening. Well, and really, the other thing I did, which I have free on my website too, is appreciation journal. And I would write down, things that I appreciated in others, things that I appreciated in life, and most importantly, every day, 3 things I appreciated in myself. And this is really important because it's what helps us start hearing what we're really saying to ourselves that's blocking all the opportunities and intuitions. Because it's our self-talk, and not just our self-talk, but what we believe from like news and what others say. We take in stuff that doesn't have to be true for us unless we decide it is. Our brain is super powerful. Feed it something different. And then I started being able to change and see the good during well, I got that bill paid. Well, I managed to do this. Well, look, I have a little extra here. And so I started building up victories. Things started to go better. And really, as much as it seemed like sometimes it was slow, clearly it was very quick considering how quickly. And then, right about the time that I was really almost out of debt is when my mother's health started crashing. And, I was like, oh, and then I just made myself a promise. I said, I'm not going back down that road. Nothing. This is not going to be easy. I'm going to use every tool I have, but I am not going to be overwhelmed, because I understand that when I'm overwhelmed, I'm disconnected from source energy, God, from that intuition, that knowing. Overwhelmed means you're not trusting and believing. And that's what you need for those steps to unfold. And so, is to focus on believing in solutions and focus on solutions no matter what the problem is. I got immediate solutions in crazy times that it's usually not easy to do, for a place for my parents to be when my mom finally decided. Literally, the so my mom, when she finally decided, her health was really crashing. So I am desperate. Nobody can sign on their bank accounts at that point. I'm like, if I don't get that done and she passes away, I'm going to be in a serious situation, because I'm not going to be able to help my dad. And he can't live with me. Like, he can't function without help. She should have had help for him several years before she did. But he knew her and he knew that house. As soon as you took him out of that environment, it was terrible.
And dementia's awful.
Yeah, and he didn't even know he thought I was his sister. I mean, and so um literally, mom's going the day I was supposed to go to get her to sign the papers at the bank. She calls up that morning. I got to work, a surgery canceled, and I said, y'all, move up the appointments. Let's see who we can move up. I just have this gut level feeling, intuition, that I need to leave early. And so I got out of there early, and I was already driving to Oklahoma when she called and said she didn't think that she could go to the bank. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm supposed to move him to Texas tomorrow. And I knew I had to do that before we moved him. And so I'm driving along, and anyway, the banker calls. The banker ends up saying I can go to the bank while and a friend drove her to the hospital. Literally, literally, she was signing the papers and a couple of checks as they're loading her on the ambulance, because they decide now that she needs to go to Oklahoma City. Always in the past, she had gone to this small town hospital and they would take care of dad. This time, they're shipping her to Oklahoma City. I now have a place to take dad. I mean, like, we're talking hours, right? And I had the intuition to get checks signed because the banker told me to put the stuff in the drop box. And I thought, well, what happens if, that doesn't go through? And that's exactly what happened. If I hadn't thought to and I literally was walking out of the hospital and I had this gut feeling to turn back in and get those checks signed, in which she was signing as they were loading her on the ambulance. And, all of this crazy, all the way through, stuff like that happened. It was.
That's insane. I
And
mean,
the
that was
thing
a
was, is I
lot.
understood the difference. Okay, so the difference in that, I could have had that same thing when I was doing with my brother, except I got overwhelmed and I blocked it by the things I was telling myself. The importance of that is how clear I am on what I'm supposed to share and teach others, that you're blocking the good that is coming to you with your thoughts. You don't know it, it's not intentional, but hey, there's tools that can teach you how to unblock that block. And what happens when you do that? And every day we miss opportunities because we don't believe they're for us, or we don't believe we're ready for them. And the things that we tell ourselves and the things we let other people tell us and we take in and validate it. And that's where, when you live from the inside out, you can decide, is that valuable or not valuable when people tell you things, as opposed to just owning it, whether it's true or not.
You mentioned the tools again, and I know you stated reverse, rebuild, and reframe. So tell us a little bit about the how you actually came up with reverse, rebuild, and reframe.
And so the order is actually it's reverse, reframe, and rebuild. Might have had it, I think it might be written wrong in my bio. So
It
now
is.
that that I'll make sure that gets fixed. But reversing is the tools to start reversing that outside in thinking, to understand it and use tools to start changing it. Reframe is starting to reframe those thoughts that we have that are hurting us, whether it's thoughts we're telling ourselves, like, you suck, you never get this right, those types of things. Because, affirmations only work to a point. If you're saying to yourself, all the time. And a lot of this stuff is stuff we've been telling. This is why appreciation tool helps us start to recognize what we're really saying to ourselves, because we said it to ourselves so long, so consistently. It's like our arm or our hand. We don't recognize it.
When you
It's
say something or
familiar,
you do something
normal.
repeatedly, you create a habit.
Yeah, and you believe it because you don't even recognize it. And so when you start talking nice to yourself, when you start appreciating yourself, which for a lot of people doesn't feel, it feels weird at first. And this isn't for giant achievements. This is everyday things. I got up today. I've improved my workout routine. I went to the gym today. And then be kind to yourself when you don't, because what we also do is immediately start beating ourselves up. You don't grow from that, and you're not giving yourselves tools, and that's what we don't realize. But reframe is you, when you've been telling yourself something for a long time and you say, I can't do that, or I'm not able to do that, and whatever that is, you're not just going to be able to go, oh, I'm great at that, and believe it. That's a positive affirmation that doesn't feel good when you say it, and it's not going to get better. But what you can start doing is saying, what would it look like if I actually could do this? What would it feel like if I could actually do this? And you start to reframe and soften that. And that will start to and then you'll notice, oh, look, I did better at that this time.
The little
Because
bit of
you can
imposter
soften it
syndrome.
up and open yourself up to actually see. Because we tell ourselves a lot of times, and we actually sometimes do get it right. But every time we have a challenge, we tell ourselves we never get it right. And so as we start to soften it, things start to go a little better. And if we use our tools of appreciation to keep recognizing, that's the other thing I did over and over, look for anything positive, look for anything to appreciate, and do it in the business and do it in my life. And I wrote it every day. So I did meditation to stop the negative voice. I wrote the appreciation journal every day. And I really learned how to start reframing things and how to start seeing the good and how to start thinking differently.
Mhm.
I actually am working on a subscription called Flip the Script, and it's going to be not only meditations, but mindset flip the scripts, short ones for all different situations, for when you're sick or not feeling well or have chronic disease or in your profession. So all different professions, so that like you're driving to work and you're able to pop in a 5-minute thing that, if you're a teacher, that you can really take in and say, I love what I do, and I love that I can help these students, and I love my intuition that allows me to notice when a student is having a hard time and be able to figure out easily what would be the next step for them, or have a connection to someone that sees that, or an article, and as you tell yourself these things, they start to happen more and more, because we go through our morning and it's kind of, we let things happen to us. We let events, we let traffic, we let a grouchy person affect our day, instead of realizing that we can stay in our point of power, and we're 100% responsible for our emotions, our actions, and our choices. We get to choose. We're just choosing by default a lot of times. And the goal is to start choosing on purpose and recognizing when we're falling into a pattern that's choosing by default and changing it.
That is an absolutely awesome outlook. Absolutely awesome. I think that all of my listeners, even though they're not, all subscribers, people don't like to subscribe to things, even though they listen to them. I always get commentary and feedback on my podcast. And it's like, well, did you subscribe? Well, no. He said, you gotta love it, you gotta subscribe. But I think that this will resonate a lot with the women that I have in my network, especially with the fact of a lot of what you're saying reminds me of imposter syndrome, where like in my business, I worked for years and years and years. I've been in my business for 32 years. I've perfected a lot of things in my business to where I can do them with my eyes closed, but it took me 32 years to get there, and I don't look at it saying, well, I know I can do that. I look at it immediately and I say, I can't do that. And that's me telling myself that negativity. That's not me, as you put it in your bio, it's not me reversing my way of thinking. I automatically say I can't do it, and that's in my head. Now, what I'm telling people on the outside, it's like, yeah, sure, I could do that, not a problem. And I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea how to make this work, but then I'll stop. And this is probably from the years that I've been in my business. I'll stop. I will reverse my way of thinking and say, well, I will learn how to do it. And then I will reframe, and then I will build, or I rebuild in that respect. So there's a lot of things that I actually do daily that I would normally have a imposter syndrome with and say, well, I just I can't do it. And I know for a fact that there's a lot of women in the business world that go through this as well. Every single day of their lives, they face something. Somebody puts something on their computer, somebody puts something on their desk, where in their head, they're like, I can't do that. I have no idea how to do that. How in the hell am I supposed to do that? And we need to, as you put it, we need to reverse that way of thinking. We need to reframe our mindset, and we need to rebuild.
Well, not only that, we get to reverse it. We
Yes.
get to reframe it, and we get to rebuild. We get to rebuild. And the thing is I don't know that anybody gets to the point where you don't have some of that. I use these tools every day. It just gets easier. I can laugh at myself when I land in that spot and I realize what I'm thinking. And I really appreciate that, as opposed to just drowning in it and not understanding it. And feeling frustrated when you think, I mean, I used to, honestly, I would learned early on that I was responsible for other people's emotions, the way of my growing up household functioned. And so I thought that I had to make not only did I think I had to make other people happy in order to have a chance at happiness, but I needed people to need me. Well, when you need people to need you to feel validated, the people that you attract are exhausting because they're using you instead of, they don't take any responsibility for themselves. They need you for that. And so they dump all their stuff on you and expect you to come up with solutions. And it is 100% responsibility can seem like the hard path at first, because it seems easier to blame somebody else. Well, he did this and that's why I'm mad. But it's not easier in the long run, because you can't control him. You do have control of you. So when you decide to take 100% responsibility for yourself, and that's whether you're married, because even in a marriage, your spouse can't make you happy. You too can enjoy things together. You can support each other, but no one can make anyone else happy. Nor are you in control of their emotions if they choose to be mad at something you say or do. And you have to own your part in any part of that, like fairly, right? But that gets to be easier because you really want to own your part in it and have good relations, like even with coworkers. Like a few months ago, I was working with someone that I work with on a regular basis, and she's really quiet and sweet. And she had asked me a question multiple times, and I didn't just have her case, I had multiple other cases going on, and I was short in a reply. And I realized on my own, she didn't say anything, but I thought, ugh, that tone of voice was terrible. And so when she came back out of the exam room, I said, I'm really sorry I'm sorry my tone of voice sounded like that. That was inappropriate, and I apologize. And she said, apology accepted. Well, here's the thing. She probably would have never said a word, right? She's very sweet. But if I don't acknowledge it, there's something inside of me that doesn't feel good. that I'm carrying around that absolutely affects me, whether you want to own it or you don't. And I'm more likely to do it again if I don't step up and apologize. That's because you let it slide, they didn't say anything. And then that erodes that relationship over time, right? The fact that I owned it immediately, it's never happened again. We have a great working relationship. She easily accepted the apology because it wasn't like I did it 20 times and then she had to call me on it. And and that's the importance of 100% responsibility. Now, could there be a time where you don't recognize that yes. But sometimes people are going to take something personally that you didn't say personally, that there was no ill will. And then it's up to you to decide, do I owe them apology or I don't? Is this valid or is it not valid? What happens when we're not really solid in ourselves, though, is we take that personally and then there becomes this whole big mess out of it that doesn't. And here's the thing, when we're angry, when we're sad, when we're frustrated, when we're overwhelmed, all those things, we are not well lined up with ourselves, God, source energy, the universe, whatever you want to say. When you're feeling in those spaces, you're not letting in solutions and intuitions and inspiration. So it affects the quality and of your life when you allow all those things to affect you. And we as a society have seriously gotten to a point where we accept it as normal to not feel good a good portion of the time. We do not make an effort to feel good. We allow ourselves to give away our power, to give away our happiness by choosing to be angry or sad or mad at others and lay that responsibility on them instead of taking it for ourselves. And then we wonder why we have health issues. All of those things are associated. You carry
Everything
that
you,
around.
everything
Yeah.
you push out will come back to you. If you
And
push
when you
it,
walk around anxious and of course you're anxious and stressed because if you're not in control of you, if you're not 100% responsible for your life and then you're always going to be worrying about what the other person is doing or what the economy is doing. Listen, you can succeed no matter what's going on in the economy. You can succeed no matter who's in political office. You can see it's what you tell yourself that matters.
yes,
Period.
100%. 100%. My husband went for a job interview one time for the railroad before we ever moved out of Chicago. And the HR guy asked him a question. Well, it was about safety. And but if you look at if you look at his response, it correlates itself to life, to every situation. He goes, "How much safety are you in control of?" My husband goes, 50%. Guy's like, 50%. He goes, "Well, I know I'm 100% safe." He goes, "But I have no idea what the other person is doing." He goes, "I can't control what they're doing." He goes, "Because I don't," he goes, "I'm not them." He goes, "So I can only control 50% of the situation, but I control my response to it or my approach to it 100%." So, like you said, if you put out 100% and you give it 100%, you're going to get at least 50% back because you can't control what they do. You can't control what somebody else says. You can't control how they respond, but you can control you, plain and simple.
Yes, but you don't need to control them. You have way more than a 50% response when it comes to your life by taking 100% responsibility.
Exactly.
Because you will start to attract other people who want to take 100% responsibility as you live that life. And the people that want you to be responsible for them, when you just graciously stay in that lane, and it takes some work to get there, because if you've been in that space, which I was, of having multiple people who needed I thought I needed them. And in little, they fell away as things changed, as I learned and grew, or I gently released them. And I seriously, I had a friend for a number of years that fell into that category. And I realized during my cancer treatment that it was a one-way street. Some things happened that made it clearly obvious. But at that point in time, I wasn't ready. I recognized it. I owned that I recognized it, wasn't ready to release it at that point. But there came a time where I did. 10 years later, that person reached out to me, which has been in the last year or so, and wanted to reconnect. And I thought about it and I thought, I'm not in that space. because there's never been any acknowledgement of the fact that it was a one-way street. And so why would I want to go back down that road at this point? And honoring myself in that respect with kindness, right? She's doing the best she can with the tools she has, and bless her. But I have zero desire to go. I now have wonderful, rich friendships that are two-way streets with wonderful people, both men and women. And I don't have any desire to be in a relationship that isn't a two-way street of any type.
I had a girlfriend for years, and I used to call her a vampire because whenever we would hang out the next day, I was just absolutely exhausted. She would literally drain my energy. And it was through
But
no
the thing
fault
is,
of
you were
her own.
allowing it, right?
Yes,
So that's
exactly.
that's the two part to it. I was allowing it. And even when I first recognized it, I was also able to recognize that I wasn't ready to release it, that I hadn't grown to the point. But the first step was at least recognizing it.
Yes, you have to see what it is that you're allowing. Now, I mean, I still talk to her every once in a while, but it is not like what it used to be. And whenever I do talk to her, I steer the conversation to where I need it to be. I hate to say it like that, but it's the truth. And then she doesn't drain me. She doesn't exhaust me because she's still exactly the exact same way that she was then that she is now. I mean, I still where we never had a falling out or anything like that. We just kind of moved apart. And
Right.
and I moved in a different direction in that respect. Whereas I will still remember her friendship kindly and with fondness, but to be her daily type friend, I can no longer do that.
Well, and the thing is, she's doing the best she can with the tools she has,
Yes.
right? And you're
Yes.
grateful that you're not in that space anymore because you've gotten to grow and learn. So and that's the most beautiful way. And sometimes you find that's true with family members as you grow, because a lot of what you learn that you're growing through may change those dynamics, but you can do it lovingly, and you can appreciate, because you can't. And this is what we do too. So we want to change, but we want them to change too. And we want to, control them by getting them to change. It's not your job. It's not your
Yeah,
job. The most gift you can give them is love them right where they are, not trying to change them. The biggest gift you can give yourself is love you, grow you, and love them where they are, all of them, any of them, whoever they are. The new people coming in and the people that maybe end up a little further out in the parameters so that you can grow, right? But you still love them, and you can develop relationships. You can change those relationships in ways that are better for you without cutting them off, without, at first, when we start to learn to set boundaries, because I didn't have any, you kind of do it out of anger and you're really mad that you have to set boundaries. And then when you really grow, you learn that that's normal and there's nothing to be angry about. And it's because you never learned how to set them, and you always had this expectation for whatever reason, because you didn't have them to begin with, and neither did the people around you. That's why you didn't learn them, that people are going to innately understand them, and that's not how it works. And it becomes easy to be clear and not have any emotion around it. Like, this is the way it is. You can choose to be in this space or not, and either way is fine, right? It's whatever
exactly.
works for you. And let them be whoever they are and release it. And is there sometimes work to do around that, depending on their? Absolutely. But if you have a clear idea of what feels good, then it's not that hard to figure it out, right? It might take you might have to do some flip the scripts, I call them. I do them all the time. I do them every day. I'm like, is that a good thought process? Is that really where I want to go with that? And sometimes I laugh because, that wasn't a good thought process. I see the results of that one. That one didn't work so well. What do we want
Yeah.
to do now?
Yeah, definitely going down the wrong road. Well, Dr. Lucette, thank you very much for this conversation. It has been very enlightening. Your journey is absolutely awe-inspiring and kudos to you. Absolute kudos to you. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your coaching and how they can find you?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I do one-on-one coaching. I also have, which we were going to make sure you guys have the link to, a free little mini workshop that is on reverse, reframe, and rebuild to get you started. And the one-on-one coaching you can find on drlucette.net on my website. And I do have a free 30-minute consult, so you're always welcome to do that. And then if you just want to use that to help you strategize, absolutely. Just hop in and do that. And I do have free resources on my website as well.
Thank you very much for that. And
Mm.
I will actually post all of these links in the bio and her bio in the link for YouTube and for Spotify. So it'll be in the description. If you are looking to reach out to her and you didn't catch the episode, but you heard of her, just shoot me an email and I can get that back to you, ssocoaching76@gmail.com. And remember, everybody, see your strength, recognize your significance, and embrace your opportunity. Thank you and have a great day.